The laugh didn't belong in that room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel on the surface. It was worse than that. It was comfortable. Petty Officer Second Class Lena Morales stood perfectly still, heels together on the scuffed tile floor of Building 17, hands clasped behind her back the way she'd been trained since boot camp. The posture was automatic now, muscle memory built from years of discipline. Her heart was racing anyway. The overhead lights buzzed softly, casting a pale greenish hue over the narrow interview room. A single table, 4 chairs, no windows. The smell of old coffee and disinfectant clung to the air like something that never quite left. Across from her sat 3 men in Navy utilities. Boots loose, sleeves rolled just enough to signal confidence, rank tabs visible but not emphasized, the way people dressed when they didn't expect consequences. One of them leaned back in his chair, balancing on 2 legs. "So," he said, dragging the word out, "let's get this straight." Lena kept her eyes forward. "You're saying," another added, "that a routine overnight task somehow turned into—" "What exactly?" He smiled as he said it. Not kind, not curious, amused. Lena swallowed. She had replayed this moment 100 times in her head before walking into the building. Practiced answers, steady breathing, keep it professional, stick to facts. "I was assigned inventory verification for secured equipment," she said evenly. "During the task, inappropriate conduct occurred." "Inappropriate," the first man repeated, tasting the word. "That's a pretty broad term, Morales." The chair legs hit the floor as he leaned forward. "You want to be specific?" The third man chuckled under his breath. Lena felt the heat rise in her chest. She named what she could, what policy allowed, what procedure demanded. She did not embellish. She did not dramatize. She told the truth. Silence followed. Then the laugh again, low. "Easy." The third man tilted his head. "Well," he said, "that's a serious claim." He paused. "Problem is, none of us remember it that way." The second man shrugged. "And right now," he added, "it's your word against ours." Lena's fingers tightened behind her back. She could feel her pulse in her ears. The first man smiled wider. "If you're saying something crossed a line," he said, "maybe you should show us what you mean." The words landed heavier than a shout ever could. Lena froze. Not because she didn't understand them, but because she did. The hum of the lights grew louder. Her training screamed at her to maintain bearing. Her instincts screamed something else. Before she could respond, the door opened. Boots on tile. Slow. Measured. Every head in the room turned. The man who stepped inside didn't rush, didn't raise his voice, didn't even close the door behind him right away. He wore a simple working uniform, sleeves down, name tape clean. Cole. There was nothing flashy about him. No visible weapon. No aggressive posture, just stillness, the kind that came from people who had seen chaos and learned how to stand inside it. He scanned the room in a single glance. Lena at attention. 3 men seated too comfortably. The air thick with something unspoken. "Petty Officer Morales," he said calmly. She snapped her head toward him. "Yes, Chief. Step outside. Please." Her hesitation lasted half a second. Then she obeyed. As she passed him, he didn't look at her, but he spoke quietly enough that only she could hear. "You're not alone anymore." The door closed behind her. The laughter did not resume. Chief Special Warfare Operator Ethan Cole removed his cover and placed it on the table with deliberate care. Only then did he look at the men. "Which one of you," he asked evenly, "was just speaking?" The first man opened his mouth. Cole raised a hand. "No, sit." The command wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. All 3 men sat back. Cole folded his arms. "I was informed that this interview involved allegations of misconduct," he said. "I was not informed that intimidation was part of the process." The second man scoffed. "With respect, Chief, this is an internal—" Cole stepped closer. "Respect," he said quietly, "is demonstrated through conduct, not rank and not numbers." He looked at each of them in turn. "You will remain seated. You will not speak unless asked, and you will answer truthfully." A beat. "If that's a problem," he added, "we can involve people for whom it will be a much bigger problem." No one spoke. Lena leaned against the hallway wall, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking now that no one could see them. She stared at the exit sign at the end of the corridor, its red glow pulsing softly. Part of her wanted to run. Another part wanted to disappear. She had known reporting would be hard. She hadn't known it would feel like this. Footsteps approached. A young corpsman stood awkwardly a few feet away. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He didn't push. "Chief Cole doesn't miss much," he said after a moment. "You did the right thing." She wasn't sure she believed that yet. Lena Morales hadn't joined the Navy to be brave. She joined because she believed in rules. Growing up, rules had been the only things that made sense, the only things that felt fair. When rules were followed, people were safer. The military promised structure, order, a system where lines mattered. Standing outside that room, she wondered if she'd been naive. Cole leaned against the table. "Let's start over," he said. "From the beginning." He pointed to the first man. "You." The man hesitated. Cole waited. The story that followed was polished, casual, carefully vague. Cole didn't interrupt. Then he turned to the second man. The details didn't line up. Times shifted. Phrases changed. By the time the third man spoke, the room felt smaller. Cole straightened. "You've all just given 3 versions of the same event," he said calmly, "and not one of them matches the duty log." Silence. "Here's what's going to happen next," Cole continued. "This interview is suspended, NCIS will be notified, and all 3 of you will remain available." One of the men finally spoke. "You're taking her side?" Cole met his eyes. "I'm taking the truth's side," he said, "and I suggest you start doing the same." Lena watched the sunrise from the barracks window that morning. The base came alive slowly, engines starting, flags rising, routine returning. Nothing looked different, but everything was. Somewhere in Building 17, the quiet had been broken, and it would not be repaired easily. By 0700, the base looked exactly the way it always did. Flags snapping in the morning wind, Marines jogging in formation, engines whining awake on the flight line, order restored. From the outside, nothing had happened. That was always the lie. Petty Officer Second Class Lena Morales stood in formation outside her unit's building, eyes forward, jaw clenched, listening to morning briefings she barely heard. The words washed over her. Maintenance schedules, readiness updates, weather advisories. Normal. Too normal. Inside her chest, something felt permanently off balance, like a compass that no longer trusted north. She knew what happened next in stories like hers. Whispers, side glances, a subtle change in tone when people said her name. The Navy didn't need to punish you outright. It could just step back, let gravity do the rest. At 09:15, Lena's phone vibrated. Unknown extension. She stared at it for a moment before answering. "Morales." "Petty Officer." "Morales," a voice said crisply. "Female. Senior. Controlled. This is Lieutenant Commander Reeves. You are to report to my office at 1000. No explanation. No reassurance." "Yes, ma'am." The line went dead. Lena exhaled slowly. She'd imagined this meeting too. Commanders asking careful questions. Concern. Support. She had also imagined the other version, the one where tone mattered more than words. Reeves's office was immaculate. No personal photos, no clutter, just polished wood, framed commendations, and a perfectly aligned American flag in the corner. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Reeves sat behind her desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. Lena stood at attention. "At ease," Reeves said, gesturing to a chair. Lena sat. Reeves studied her for a moment, not unkindly but thoroughly. "You understand the seriousness of what you've reported," Reeves began. "Yes, ma'am. You also understand the potential consequences," she continued. "For everyone involved." Lena nodded. Reeves leaned back slightly. "This base runs on trust," she said. "On cohesion. Allegations like this disrupt that." There it was. Not harm. Not wrongdoing. Disruption. "I want to be clear," Reeves said carefully. "I am not saying you are lying." Lena waited. "But," Reeves continued, "perception matters. Timing matters. And intent matters." She paused. "You're early in your career, Morales. One incident, handled poorly, can define you. The room felt suddenly smaller. I followed protocol, Lena said quietly. I reported what happened. Reeves nodded. I know, and that will be considered. Another pause. In the meantime, Reeves added, you'll be reassigned temporarily, less visibility, fewer interactions. Lena felt the words land, isolation, dressed as protection. Yes, ma'am. Reeves softened, just slightly. This is not a punishment, she said. It's a precaution. Lena stood, saluted, and left. By afternoon, the change was already happening. A planned task was reassigned. A casual conversation ended when she approached. A senior petty officer who used to joke with her now spoke only in clipped professionalism. No one accused her. No one defended her either. She ate lunch alone. She trained alone. At the gym that night, she caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Not weaker, but exposed. Like everyone could see something written on her she hadn't put there. Chief Ethan Cole noticed the shift the same way he noticed everything else, indirectly. A delayed response to an email, a meeting he was no longer invited to, a commander who spoke a little slower around him. By dinner, he knew what was happening. The system was doing what it always did when challenged. Closing ranks. Cole stood on the catwalk overlooking the training pool, watching operators run drills below. Precision, discipline, silence. This was the military he believed in, but belief didn't blind him. He'd seen this pattern before. Truth didn't get attacked directly. It got starved. That evening, Cole was called into the executive officer's office. Captain James Holloway didn't waste time. You overstepped, Holloway said bluntly. Cole stood at parade rest. I intervened in an active interview where misconduct was occurring. Holloway sighed. You inserted yourself into an internal matter involving personnel outside your command. I inserted accountability, Cole replied calmly. Holloway leaned forward. This base does not need a crusade, he said. It needs stability. Cole met his gaze. Stability without integrity is just decay with better lighting. Silence stretched. Holloway shook his head. You're a respected operator, he said. Don't turn this into something it doesn't have to be. Cole didn't respond, because he knew exactly what Holloway meant. Let it fade. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction from the past 24 hours. Had she said too much? Too little? Had she misunderstood tone? Context? Doubt crept in quietly. That was the most dangerous part. At 200, she sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. She opened her locker and pulled out her uniform blouse, fingers brushing over the name tape. Morales. She whispered it aloud. I'm still here. The next morning, her access badge failed. Once, twice. The third time, the guard frowned. That's odd, he said. Looks like your clearance level changed. Lena felt the familiar cold tighten in her chest. Changed how? She asked. The guard hesitated. Downgraded, he said. Temporary, probably. Probably. She turned away before he could see her reaction. By midday, Cole had confirmed what his instincts already told him. Morales was being quietly sidelined, not officially punished, just erased. Cole stood in the operations room, staring at the mission board. He thought about the teammate he'd lost years ago, the one who'd trusted the system and paid for it. He wasn't going to watch it happen again. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't wanted to use. NCIS, the voice answered. This is Chief Ethan Cole, he said. I'm calling to formally request oversight on an ongoing misconduct investigation at Naval Base. The line went quiet, involving potential witness intimidation. A pause. Understood, Chief, the agent said finally. We'll be in touch. Cole hung up. There was no going back now. That evening, Lena passed Cole near the hangars. They didn't stop, didn't speak, but as they crossed paths, Cole glanced at her once, just once, and nodded. It wasn't reassurance, it was a promise. By nightfall, the base felt tense in a way Lena couldn't explain, like something heavy was moving beneath the surface. The chain of command had tightened, but chains, she was beginning to learn, could pull both ways. Chief Ethan Cole had learned long ago that silence could be louder than gunfire. He stood alone on the observation deck above the training grounds as night settled over the base, the sky turning the color of cold steel. Below him, operators moved through drills with mechanical precision. Breach, clear, reset. Every motion controlled, every word clipped and purposeful. This was the language he understood best. Not meetings, not memos, not politics. War was honest, people were not. Ethan Cole had not grown up dreaming of becoming a Navy SEAL. He grew up learning how to disappear, a quiet kid, sharp-eyed, the kind who watched before he spoke. His father had been a firefighter, calm under pressure, steady when things burned. His mother taught him something different, that doing the right thing didn't always come with applause. When Cole enlisted, the Navy gave him direction. When he earned the Trident, it gave him identity. But it was a mission years later that gave him purpose. It happened overseas. Different country, different war, same silence. A junior operator, barely 24, had reported misconduct inside their own unit. Nothing flashy, nothing criminal on paper, but enough to threaten reputations. The kid believed in the system, believed that truth mattered. Within weeks, he was transferred, then sidelined, then quietly pushed out. Officially, it was performance issues. Unofficially, everyone knew. 2 months later, the kid took his own life. Cole had been on deployment when he got the message. No ceremony, no accountability. Just a folded flag and a closed file. That was the moment Cole learned something the manuals never taught. The most dangerous thing in the military wasn't the enemy. It was what happened when power went unchecked. Cole leaned on the railing, watching the drills below blur into repetition. Morales' face kept surfacing in his mind. Not fear, resolve. The kind that cost people more than they expected. He checked his watch. He knew where she'd be. Lena Morales walked the perimeter road every night now. It helped her think. The base at night was a different place. Quieter, more honest. Fewer eyes, fewer performances. She heard boots behind her and stopped. Didn't turn, didn't tense. She already knew. "Evening, petty officer," Cole said. "Evening, chief." They stood side by side, facing the dark outline of hangars against the stars. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Cole did. "They'll try to make you doubt yourself," he said calmly. "That's how this works," Lena nodded. "I already am," she admitted. Cole didn't correct her. "Doubt doesn't mean you're wrong," he said. "It means you're human." She glanced at him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Cole looked out over the base. "Because someone should have helped someone else once," he said. "And they didn't." That was all he said, and it was enough. The next morning, Cole sat alone in a secured office, a thin folder open in front of him. Personnel records, duty logs, access timestamps. Patterns emerged when you stopped pretending not to see them. The 3 men from Building 17 had histories, not incidents exactly, just trails, complaints that went nowhere, transfers that happened quietly, evaluations that stayed just good enough. Cole closed the folder. He knew what this meant. This wasn't a single bad night. It was a system that had learned how to protect itself. By noon, Cole's name was circulating, not officially, the way rumors moved when people were nervous. He was called into another meeting, this time with a different tone. "You're becoming a distraction," one commander said. Cole nodded once. "Then the problem isn't me," he replied. "It's what you're trying not to look at." The room went cold. "You're a war fighter," the commander said. "Not an investigator." Cole leaned forward slightly. "I'm a leader," he said, "and leadership doesn't stop when things get uncomfortable." That meeting ended without resolution, which meant escalation. Meanwhile, Lena trained harder than ever. Longer runs, heavier lifts, perfect scores, not to prove anything, but because discipline was the one thing no one could take from her. A junior sailor approached her in the locker room one afternoon. Quiet, nervous. "I heard what you did," the sailor said. "I just wanted to say, thank you." Lena didn't know what to say. So she said the truth. "I just didn't want it to happen again." The sailor nodded. Sometimes that was enough. Cole stood in the armory that night, hands resting on a cold steel workbench. He knew what came next. Once you pulled on a thread like this, you didn't get to choose how much unraveled. He picked up the phone again. Another call, another line crossed, this time to someone even higher. The operator's war had never been about enemies in the dark. It had always been about light, and in the coming days, that light was going to expose more than anyone was ready for. The truth doesn't usually come out in daylight. It waits. It hides in timestamps, in forgotten corners of hard drives, in the spaces between official statements. It survives on the assumption that no one will look too closely, because looking too closely is inconvenient. Chief Ethan Cole knew this kind of terrain. Night operations weren't just missions overseas. They were moments when you moved carefully, deliberately, and without applause. This was one of those moments. NCIS arrived quietly. No sirens, no announcements. 2 unmarked vehicles rolled onto base just after 2200, their presence noticed only by those who were already paying attention. Cole watched from a distance as agents disappeared into administrative buildings, their silhouettes swallowed by shadow. He didn't join them. That wasn't his role. His role was to make sure the door stayed open long enough for the truth to walk through. Lena sensed the shift before anyone told her. The air on base felt different, tight, alert. Conversation stopped when unfamiliar footsteps approached. Officers checked their phones more often. Something was happening. At 23:07, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Morales, Petty Officer Morales," a calm male voice said. "This is Special Agent Turner, NCIS. We'd like to speak with you tonight." Her stomach tightened. "Yes, sir. Are you somewhere private?" She looked around the empty rec room. "I am now. We'll come to you," Turner said. "Please remain available." The call ended. Lena sat down slowly. This was it. Not everyone welcomed NCIS. One of the men from Building 17, now officially under review, was called into a separate interview earlier that evening. He didn't deny. He reframed. He implied misunderstandings, misinterpretations, overreactions. And then, quietly, he did what men like him always did when cornered. He named Lena. "She's unstable," he said. "Ambitious, looking for attention." The accusation was old, effective, but this time it didn't land the way it used to, because NCIS had already seen the logs and the footage. Security cameras were not placed to catch misconduct. They were placed to protect assets, but they caught something anyway. Not everything, just enough. Body positioning. Proximity, blocked exits. The truth rarely announces itself. It whispers, and the footage whispered loud enough. Agent Turner and his partner met Lena in a small, neutral office away from her chain of command. No uniforms, no rank displayed, just questions. Clear, precise. "Tell us what you remember," Turner said. Lena did. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She spoke without embellishment, without anger, just facts. Turner nodded occasionally, never interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back. "Thank you," he said. "I know this isn't easy." Lena exhaled. "Am I in trouble?" she asked quietly. Turner met her eyes. "No," he said. "You're a witness." For the first time in days, something in her chest loosened. Cole received a short text an hour later. "We have enough to proceed. Thank you for the push." He deleted it immediately. This wasn't over. Enough to proceed didn't mean enough to win. By morning, the base was buzzing, not openly, but the rumors had teeth now. Someone had talked, someone had crossed a line. A senior officer pulled Cole aside near the hangars. "You're burning bridges," the officer said quietly. Cole didn't argue. "Good," he replied. "Some of them shouldn't exist." The officer shook his head. "You won't like how this ends." Cole thought of the junior operator from years ago. "I already know how it ends if it doesn't happen," he said. That afternoon, Cole was informed his deployment rotation was being reconsidered. An administrative pause, career language for warning. He stood alone in his quarters that night, staring at the wall where his trident plaque hung. This was the price. He'd always known it. The difference was, this time, he was willing to pay it. Later that evening, Lena stood on the flight line watching aircraft lift into the dark sky. Chief Cole joined her quietly. "They spoke to you," he said. "Yes, Chief. You did well." She nodded. Then she asked the question that had been sitting between them for days. "What if this ruins you?" Cole smiled faintly. then it means it mattered. At SO 300, formal notices were issued. Administrative relief, restricted access, orders pending. The men from Building 17 were no longer untouchable, they were no longer confident, and for the first time, the base knew this wasn't going away. Night operations ended with the first light of dawn. Truth had been pulled from the dark, not cleanly, not gently, but firmly enough that it could no longer be ignored. The next phase wouldn't happen quietly. It would happen under oath. The courtroom didn't look the way Lina Morales had imagined it. There were no raised voices, no dramatic gestures, no sudden revelations shouted into silence. It was smaller than she expected, colder, controlled. A room designed not for emotion, but for record. Wood-paneled walls, flags standing rigid in the corners. A long table where counsel sat with their binders aligned like weapons laid out before inspection. Lina stood just outside the doors, hands clasped, breathing slow. This was the part no one talked about. The part after courage. She could hear voices through the door, muffled, measured, professional. Her name had already been said inside that room. She knew that because she felt it every time someone inside paused. Chief Ethan Cole stood a few steps away, arms folded, gaze steady on nothing in particular. "You don't have to look at them," he said quietly. "Only answer what's asked." Lina nodded. "I know." She didn't add what she was really thinking. "I'm not afraid of them." She was afraid of being reduced to a footnote. The military judge entered. Everyone stood. The formality was absolute, impersonal, equalizing. This wasn't about rank anymore. It was about record. The charges were read calmly, precisely: abuse of authority, conduct unbecoming, violation of professional boundaries, obstruction. The men sat rigid now, no smirks, no casual posture, their uniforms immaculate, faces carefully blank. One of them glanced toward the gallery, toward Cole. Their eyes met. Cole didn't look away. The defense counsel spoke smoothly. They always did. This wasn't a denial. It was a reframing, miscommunication, stress, a misunderstanding amplified by inexperience. They spoke about reputations, years of service, isolated moments taken out of context. They never said Lina's name at first. They didn't have to. "Petty Officer Second Class Morales," the bailiff said. Lina stood. Every step into the room felt heavier than the last. She took the oath, sat. The room fell still. She answered questions the way she'd trained herself to. Clear, measured, unemotional. Where were you standing? Who was present? What was said? She didn't speculate. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't apologize. At one point, defense counsel leaned forward. "Petty officer," he said, "isn't it possible you misunderstood intent?" Lina paused, then answered. "No, sir. Why are you so certain?" She met his eyes. "Because professionalism doesn't leave room for confusion," she said. "And boundaries don't depend on interpretation." The judge made a note. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. That was it. That was the line. The defense tried once more. They brought up her reassignment, her isolation, the stress she'd been under. "Would you agree," counsel said, "that pressure can affect perception?" Lina inhaled. "Pressure affects silence," she said, "not truth." No reaction from the judge, but the room felt different now. Cole. When Cole was called, there was a subtle shift. He wasn't part of the incident, but he was part of the response. He spoke about protocol, about what he observed, about why he intervened. Defense counsel tried to paint him as overzealous. "You're an operator, Chief," the lawyer said. "Isn't it possible you saw conflict where there was none?" Cole didn't flinch. "I saw a sailor standing alone," he said, "and 3 people who thought that meant something." Silence. "That's conflict," he added. Then came the footage. Not dramatic, just quiet, undeniable frames, blocking, proximity, timestamps that contradicted testimony. No commentary, just truth, unembellished. One of the men looked down, another clenched his jaw. The third stared straight ahead. Deliberation didn't take long. When the judge returned, the room stood again. The findings were read slowly. Guilty, 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 Consequences followed. Reduction in rank, discharge, referral, no cheering, no relief, yet, just the weight of finality. Outside the courtroom, Lena stepped into the sunlight and blinked. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until her knees nearly gave out. Cole stood beside her. "It's done," he said. She nodded. "But it's not over," she replied. Cole smiled faintly. "No," he said. "It never really is." The court-martial closed a case, but it opened something else. Conversations, reports, eyes that were no longer willing to look away. Justice had spoken quietly, but it had spoken clearly. The base didn't change overnight. That was the first thing Lena Morales noticed. The same morning colors spilled across the tarmac. The same cadence calls echoed between buildings. The same routines carried on with military precision. Justice, she learned, rarely announces itself with spectacle. It settles in quietly, like a new standard everyone pretends was always there. The official notices went out in the days that followed. Policy updates, mandatory training revisions, language about reporting channels, clearer now, firmer. The words were careful, but they were there. Lena read them from her barracks room sitting on her bunk, boots unlaced, uniform folded beside her. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired, the kind of tired that came from holding yourself together while the ground shifted beneath you. She took a breath, then another, and stood up. It came when she least expected it. Lieutenant Commander Reeves stopped her outside the admin building one afternoon. "Morales." Lena came to attention. "At ease," Reeves said quickly. There was a pause, short, but heavy. "I want you to know," Reeves said, "that the command could have handled parts of this better." Lena waited. "You were right to report," Reeves continued, "and you were right to persist. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't public, but it was something." "Thank you, ma'am," Lena said. Reeves nodded once and walked away. Word traveled the way it always did on base, through sideways glances and lowered voices. But something had changed in the tone. A junior sailor stopped Lena in the hallway. "I heard what happened," he said. "I didn't know you could do that." She smiled gently. "Neither did I," she replied. Another sailor, female, older, left a note in her locker. "I wish I had your courage when I needed it." Lena folded the note carefully and tucked it into her wallet. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Chief Ethan Cole received his orders on a Tuesday morning. No ceremony, no reprimand, just reassignment. A leadership role at a training command, shaping operators before they ever saw the field. Some would call it a sidelining. Cole didn't. He stood in his quarters, looking at the trident plaque on the wall, and felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. He had done what he came to do. Before he left, he asked to see Lena. They stood near the flight line at dusk, aircraft silhouetted against the fading sky. "You going to be okay?" Cole asked. Lena nodded. "Yes, Chief." He studied her for a moment. "You know," he said, "this doesn't make you defined by what happened." "I know," she said. "It defines what I didn't accept." Cole smiled. "That's leadership," he said. She hesitated. "Thank you," she said finally, "for not looking away." Cole shook his head. "You didn't give me that option," he replied, "and that's a good thing." They shook hands. Not as protector and protected, but as equals. Months later, Lena stood in a different formation. Promotion ceremony. New rank on her sleeve. As the command read her citation, she listened, not for praise, but for meaning. Words like integrity, professional courage, service above self. She felt the weight of them now, not as slogans, as responsibilities. When the ceremony ended, she caught her reflection in the window of the building. Same name tape, same uniform, but a steadier gaze. The line isn't written anywhere. It doesn't show up in manuals or briefings. It lives in moments, quiet ones, when someone decides whether to stay silent or speak, whether to look away or step in, whether to protect power or people. Lena Morales had found that line, and she had held it. So had Ethan Cole, and because they did, others would know where it was when their moment came. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear decide what's acceptable. Institutions don't stay strong because of silence. They endure because someone, somewhere, is willing to say, This line holds.